Saints Row is only 2 days away from launch, and I'm going to be streaming it start to finish starting on Tuesday, 12 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. UK. We're going to go every day until we're done with it, so like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You get the idea. Hopefully it will be a good game. I am willing to give it a chance. I've been on the fence for the past year. But despite my concerns, I hope it turns out to be a great game, and we will find out together starting on Tuesday when Saints Row comes out across all platforms. By the way, for more information about Saints Row, videos linked below in the description section and in my Saints Row playlist. The preload for PS5, and I'm guessing also PS4, has finally begun. So it's already preloaded for everyone that pre-ordered for Xbox One, Xbox Series. And now for PlayStation 5, it's going to be roughly 53 gigs, in case anybody was wondering about the estimated size of Saints Row on your PlayStation 5. It's probably around the same over on Xbox Series. For some reason, I think it's a little bit larger for the last-gen versions of Saints Row. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. Let us talk radio stations and music, because I do come from a radio background. And there's obviously going to be radio stations in the new Saints Row game, just like previous Saints Row games, and just like previous GTA games and Mafia games. That's one of the cool things about these open world games is the radio stations and the music that happens to play on each of these stations. By the way, shout out to one of my followers, GeauxBurns. I asked how many radio stations were there going to be in Saints Row. And according to him, there's 10. And I did come across an article that backs that number from the Loadout, Saints Row radio stations, every radio station to jam out to. I'll link this article below in the description section as well. The first station we'll go over is the latest one that they teased. Now, they may have teased the rest of the stations by the time I put this video out. But Route Overdrive is the rock station. There is going to be 13 tracks on Overdrive. And one thing I find interesting about these radio stations is the frequency number, the FM number, the 103.3, is accurate to real FM stations. However, the call letters are not accurate. There are 5 call letters instead of 4, like real stations. Real stations on the west side of the Mississippi start with a K. Stations on the east side of the Mississippi start with a W, in case you were ever curious. So for Route Overdrive 103.3, I guess that's going to be the radio dial that you'll have to tune into in order to listen to this rock station. The call letters are KFVZZ. The drop, KXBPM 95.7, is apparently an EDM station, and it is going to have 14 tracks on its station. And by the way, some of these stations actually have real-life DJs or musicians, including Dillian Francis for The Drop. El Latido is the Spanish station, well, one of the Spanish stations. It'll basically be playing Latin Spanish pop. It is 106.1 on the frequency dial, according to the Saints Row Twitter, and it will have 15 tracks to play on its station. Flex 103.5 is the rap hip-hop station, and it will have 12 tracks, and its host is Trippie Redd, real-life person. And there you go. So some of the stations, like I mentioned a moment ago, actually have real-life DJs or musicians that will host the radio stations, similar to stations in GTA. Now, if you're interested in classical music, we have Santo Public Radio. This is the station that has, I think, the most tracks on it. It's going to be 17 tracks total. So this should be an interesting station to drive around Saints Row listening to classic music from some of the composers that will probably be remembered long after we're all gone, while we're raining destruction throughout the city of Santo Elso. The metal station is Nuclear Blast, and it will feature 11 tracks on its station. The Cypher is the old school hip-hop station. Its call letters are KJMMZ, and the frequency number is 99.5, and it will feature 11 tracks on the Cypher. A few stations they had yet to mention at the recording of this video, once again credit to the loadout, include Dos Ochos, which will be a classical Spanish-Mexican station, Tumbleweed Radio, the country station, and finally Outrun, which is going to be a synth pop station. Now, according to the loadout, there's supposed to be more than 12 radio stations, even though at this count we have 10 stations, but perhaps some of those stations ended up getting cut out before the final product, and that's why we ultimately only have 10 radio stations as opposed to 12 plus stations. Now, one of the fascinating thing I found at the bottom of all these tracks for each of the stations that's featured along with their logos is the same thing. More tunes on KFSTA 88.5. KFSTA 88.5 could be one of these other stations, but it's interesting that they would mention this station, KFSTA 88.5, on all this artwork, even though obviously each one of these is featuring a unique station along with the tracks that happen to be on that station. So the big question is, why would they feature one station specifically when it comes to all the stations when we have yet to know what this station is going to be? What is KFSTA 88.5? A theory I have is maybe we'll be able to have our own music and it'll just go through 88.5 on the frequency dial. Once again, that's just speculation, and perhaps we'll have the ability to create our own playlist, our own Spotify account of sorts, with all the tracks featured from all the radio stations into our very own unique playlist, and maybe that's where the more tunes on KFSTA 88.5 will happen to be piping through in our cars and throughout the game. My other theory was it was going to be just the frequency number and the call letters for Santo Public Radio, because usually public radio stations like NPR, for example, usually go with the lower frequency numbers like the 80s. The 80s are usually reserved for public radio, and 88.5 would make sense to be the frequency number for Santo Public Radio. So they also designed the CD covers for these radio stations. So you got radio stations, and you also have these fake CD covers. Maybe they're going to sell the CDs. That's kind of old school. But I did notice that we do have the call letters and the frequency number for Santo Public Radio on the CD cover for Public Radio. It is going to be KSIPR, PR for Public Radio, and 90.5. So what I said a moment ago about the 80s being usually public frequency numbers, the same thing applies not just with frequencies that happen to be in the 80s, but lower 90s tend to also be public radio frequencies as well. Just like in this case, 90.5 KSIPR for Santo Public Radio. So that's just my working theory regarding KFSTA 88.5 and why it's featured in all the graphics. It'll serve perhaps as your own quote-unquote Spotify account or your own MP3 player that pipes through a radio frequency, and that will happen to be 88.5. Then again, I could be wrong. So there you go. Those are the radio stations that we know about featured at the loadout, as well as via the official Saints Row Twitter account. I'm excited to check out the radio stations off stream, because I'm sure with a lot of those songs, there would be copyright issues that a lot of us content creators and streamers don't exactly like. But I look forward to, in between streams or after I'm done playing through Saints Row, checking out the radio stations myself and seeing the production value, like the sweepers, the DJs, and how those stations feel. Hopefully they each have a different, unique feel and vibe to them, similar to the stations that Laszlo helped make for GTA, all the way from GTA 3 to GTA 5. Your thoughts, your views, and opinions regarding Saints Row coming in about 2 days from now, as well as which radio station or stations will you be jamming to when you're riding around wreaking havoc and destruction throughout Santo Elso. As always, feel free and let us know below in the comments section.